The naked truth about Russia. Why are Russians dying in Ukraine? This is what we're gonna talk about today. Hello there, I'm Elena. Welcome to my channel Enough of Propaganda. And my channel is political channel. So I never thought I would even look into the naked party in Russia. I'm not interested or anything. Apparently, it was important. And why it is important, and why I mean the word naked literally in this video, this is what we will discuss. But before we'll start to talking more about the theme of this video, I want to remind you that at the time when in Russia, bunch of famous and not so famous actors and singers and artists created a party, a naked party, and attended that naked party and enjoyed their life and so on. Russia keep killing Ukrainians, keep bombing and shelling Ukraine, and Russian troops as well as Ukrainians basically rotting in hell and the battlefields freezing to death and so on. And this is just one of the details that recent Russian attack on railway station in Kherson. And according to the Ministry of Internal Affairs, on that station was about 140 civilians. And they were waiting for the departure of the evacuation train. As a result of Russian shelling, one 29-year-old police officer was killed, and 2 others were injured. This police lieutenant who died, he was evacuating people from the station, and he has wife and 2 children. And other 2 people were injured among the passengers. And Russians keep damaging the infrastructure of Ukraine and keep doing it. Keep shelling Ukrainians and keep killing them. Meanwhile, Russian so-called elite, actors and singers, decided to make a naked party. This is footage what Russia did to Mariinka in Ukraine. They completely wiped out the whole city. Not one building is not touched by that. Trees didn't survive. This is what Russian peace, Russian mir, brought to Ukraine. This is how it looks like. Meanwhile, Russian so-called elites living in a parallel Russia when nobody else from other Russian people are living in. This is Ksenia Sobchak, the god's daughter of Putin, who was pretending to apply to be a president on previous elections, and a journalist, and so on. And this is Ivleeva, who is organizing this so-called party. Lots of famous actors like this guy, Philip Kirkorov, is one of the very famous Russians. This is Ivleeva herself. And this guy, rapper, showed up with a sock and not on his foot. Lolita is also one of the famous Russian singers, and so on. And the point why I'm posting it is because Russia is not a democratic country. Russia is a dictatorship. Dictatorship which started the aggressive war in neighboring country and fighting this war right now. When many Russian people standing in long lines can't buy eggs. They're really buying eggs by 1 egg, and so on. When the price is growing, economy is in garbage, and Russia losing the war in Ukraine, and the Russian soldiers dying in Ukraine for 1,000 people a day, roughly. These guys decided it's a good idea to make a naked party, publish it everywhere, and wearing on the butt very expensive jewelry, 23 million worth of jewelry. I'll show it to you in a minute. So, naturally, there was outrage in Russia. And oh boy, how these so-called elite freaked out. And how much they're apologizing and beating their head on the floor and saying, oh, we're so sorry, please don't do this and stuff like that. The point is that between dictatorship and the democracy is a huge difference. In the dictatorship, you never know what kind of little snowball which you throw downhill from the mountain will create an avalanche. What kind of little pebble which create outrage that much that Putin's regime will get overthrown. That is why things like that are important because people on the front watch this and they get really, really upset and angry about this. And I'll show it to you. And now Philip Kirkorov, grown-up man, a star of Russian media, saying, oh, in the life of every person there are moments when they just walked in the wrong door. And, oh, I did a mistake. Or I'm so sorry. But I hope it wouldn't affect my presence on TV. This is what it is all about. He's just so afraid that he will be kicked out from TV. And actually, it started to happen. These people are making money by getting invited to corporate parties and stuff like that. And some of them already start to losing this clientele. For them, the life they are living, it's not Russia. Majority of Russian people don't live in this way. They don't have these cars. They still, to these days, driving not a Chinese knockoff. They driving Mercedes and BMWs. Despite the sanctions, they still eating caviar and drinking champagne. While Russian people are starving and can't buy eggs in the store and lines kilometer long and so on. These people like him or like Lolita, oh boy, they now apologizing. And even other people. This is Ksenia Sobchak, as I said. She is the basically a Russian politician who wanted to be a Russian president. Show up in that naked party. And at first she said, oh, it's our personal business. If you live in the dictatorship, this is not your personal business. When do you wake up enough to realize that? Every totalitarian government, every single one, first thing they're trying to do, one of the first things is stuck their hand in the underwear of the citizens of the country. Why? Because this is the very powerful tool to control populace. And they will do it, and they did it in the past. It was done in the USSR, and I might make a separate video about that. Another famous Russian singer, Dima Bilan, also saying, oh, it's a disinformation provocation. I'm not guilty. And Ivleeva herself is the organizer of the party, is also whining and complaining and saying, oh, no, I didn't do anything. I'm sorry. Now she's saying she's sorry.
Налоговые претензии к блогеру возникли, очевидно, после того, как Ивлеева похвасталась дорогим украшением на вечеринке.
Ты когда-нибудь видела 23 миллиона рублей на попе? Нет.
Now there are taxes. She has problems with taxes for a huge amount all of a sudden. She didn't have before. It's happened, as they said in the video, after she showed her very expensive jewelry on her rear end. 23 million rubles. She said, have you ever seen 23 million rubles on the butt? After that, Ivleeva apologizing because now she might face 5 years in jail because she is hiding from paying taxes. And there is also somebody suing her for 1 billion rubles. And now the people who was posting commercials in her social networks breaking up their contracts and so on. Some people are supporting the stars, that Russian Oleg Krasavin saying, I support that naked party. People supposed to have fun how they want. And if some idiots dying in the trenches right now for the other bastards steal money from them and these guys decided to die for them, and some other people beating their head on the floor in churches, why other people should live like them? Other people could live how they want. So this guy with a sock on his front saying, the ugly people afraid of beauty, and so on. And that would be the case in a democratic country, but Russia isn't a democratic country. These people, these stars, Sobchak, for example, they supported Putin. They supported Putin's aggressive war in Ukraine. They went to the Russian-occupied territories with concerts. They were having huge public concerts and stuff like that in support Putin when he threw in the garbage Russian constitution and decided to be a czar forever, promoting him for his elections, and the next election they will promoting him. So they are personally guilty in that war starting, and that Russian people are dying in this war, which they supported. And now they pretend, nothing in that war doesn't concern us whatsoever. It doesn't matter to us. We will having fun. Even Russian propagandist Solovyov, very famous now, he's very famous now in the world. He's Italian resident, and all his children living in so aggressive NATO countries, blaming Sobchak, who is granddaughter, basically God's daughter of Putin. He's daughter of a senator of Russian Federation, and she was former candidate to be a president of Russian Federation and a journalist, and call herself a patriot. Now he's accusing her that she is working for the enemies and she is the bad guy. The hypocrisy all of this is just disgusting. If Russians are thinking that only these stars, Kirkorov, Lolita, and that guy with a sock, the problem is in them, Putin is doing exactly the same thing, and his lover Alina Kabaeva posed nude, and I'll show you the pictures in a moment. But another point I'm trying to make here, this is the guy with a sock who's apologizing on camera. And this stuff was happening for years in the part of Russian Federation called Chechnya, which Russia fought decades of wars there to squash rebellions and squash the people in Chechnya who wanted freedom. In Chechnya, pedophiles marrying young girls, and it's considered okay because they're supposed to be Muslim country. People get tortured. People forced to apologize on camera because they offended their little Tsar Kadyrov, which you probably all heard of. And now this garbage flying into Russia. Now it's happening in Russia, which is Chechnya is part of Russia. It's part of Russian Federation legally. So Russians ignored it for decades. What's happening in Chechnya? That women getting women's circumcision, that they forced into forced marriages, that some of them getting married when they 13 and 14 to the 50, 60 years old guys, and so on. Russia ignored that. That garbage came to Russia. That is also why I'm standing up against Putin's aggression and what's happening, because I don't want this garbage came to my country, Canada, and to many other countries, democratic and well-living countries. This is what Russia stands for. This garbage is Russian life, Russian culture, and Russian way of living. Only Russians choose to ignore what's happening in Chechnya. There are people in Chechnya were dying. Russians ignored that. Now Russians are dying on the front in Ukraine because Putin decided it's a good idea to fight aggressive war in somebody else's country. And these people supported Putin. But now they're forced to apologize in front of the camera, exactly like in Chechnya. I maybe make another video someday when the leader of Chechnya, Kadyrov, his son, basically came to the prison, just walked in and beat up a prisoner there. Prisoners who insulted his Quran or whatever, burned it. So Kadyrov's son just walked in, beat the guy up, and now he's such a hero, he's getting medals from Russian Federation. There is no law in Chechnya, and now there is no law in Russia. At least before, there was some pretense of the law. Now there is no law. And this black, basically garbage, floating from Russia into other countries. We have to stop it. Otherwise, we will live like in Chechnya, ruled by mafia boss like Kadyrov, little Tsar like Putin. I don't want that. But those actors and singers are not the first ones. This is Alina Kabaeva, former gymnast and Putin's lover who born children to Putin. This is what she did in the past. And that would be okay if Russia, this is Polina Gagarina also. So if Russia wouldn't have claiming, oh, traditional values, oh, family is so important, oh, everybody who is not wrapped up in a fabric from up to the top of their ears are just immoral and so on. If they wouldn't have been hypocritical like that, they could have done what they want. But they are. And they claiming, oh, we for traditional values, we for the families, we for this, for that. Meanwhile, Putin's lover posing half nude. And now all the actors and singers doing the same thing. This is hypocrisy. Ivan Zhdanov from Navalny group made very good points on that. He's saying that because different government agencies really quickly attacked those actors, it's pointing out that administration of the president or FSB organized such a quick and active attack on these people. And he's saying basically people should be able to do what they want, and it's true. But now Ivleeva, the organizer of that party, will not be able to work in the country, and nothing of her, I'm sorry, wouldn't help. But the point is that to be in Russia and to do something without fear to be steamrolled by Russian government is impossible. And that fear created by unpredictability. And that level of unpredictability is already very high. He's thinking he wouldn't think that this party will create such a reaction. And I agree, it's just a party, but it did create a huge reaction in the society, and that is why I'm talking about this. This is from the channel Warthog Defense, this is already had subtitles. I'm just saying that this guy swearing at Putin, swearing at Shoigu, Russian Minister of Defense, and this is what he has to say.
Я просто мобилизованный, нахожусь на Донецком направлении под Маринкой. И что бы нам хотелось сказать этой власти? Вы посмотрите, какие ублюдки, когда мы там воюем, да, когда мы гнием в окопах, они, сука, носят на жопе 23 миллиона. И они хвалятся этим. Это вообще как понимать? Товарищ Путин, товарищ Шойгу, блядь. Это как понимать?
The same guy in the bigger video swearing like really badly, I won't show it, but I mean, this is what Russian soldiers see when they are on the front and they really angry. This is another group of Russian soldiers complaining about those naked party and so on. I hope they will be smart enough to turn their weapons against the people who sent them on that horrible war which nobody need to have. That is why I decided to spend my time and show it to you, all that tell you about this party, because one of the situations like that could really ignite the public in Russia. And with dictatorship, you never know which one of the little tiny rocks rolling down the hill will create a big slide. Meanwhile, in Russia, even the famous economist Vladimir Milov saying that Putin's economy can't produce anything. There was a big scandal about the eggs, and people find out that only in theory those Russian chickens making those eggs on the Russian territory, but everything, food, antibiotics, veterinarian medication, everything is imported. Russia can't create even eggs inside Russia without foreign help. And the sanctions are working, and Russian economy is suffering, and it's only gonna be worse. Russia can't even produce anything on the Russian territory, not even telephones, like cell phone, and so on. And when the Russian woman, Ekaterina Duntsova, decided to run for presidency on the platform of democratic future and no war, well, she wasn't even allowed to be registered, period. I was wondering how long Putin will let her run, and just to find out who is against the government, the current government, but they didn't take chances. They just shut her down immediately, for no reason. Putin ran Russia into the ground. He destroyed Russian economy, and this post from Ukrainian, I agree. He said, bastard wants to control my country, but he can't control the eggs in Orcs land. True. Meanwhile, Dmitry Peskov, Russian spokesman, saying that the current poverty of Russian people, apparently it's because of World War II and First World War. This is why Russians are poor. And Ukrainians are laughing and said, yeah, and Napoleon invasion. I have been and I have lived in USSR. And for decades USSR explaining every single problem, not by corruption or stupidity or not capable of running the country or absence of democracy. No! They say, oh, it's because the World War II. Yeah, 40 years later, World War II. 60 years later, still World War II. Oh, World War I now. This is how Russia explained its problems. And I remember the joke, like a couple Germans came to my city of Volgograd and they driving on the streets which looked like they were just bombed. The roads were so bad. And they were saying, oh yeah, we understand, Russia had war. They kind of was ignorant, and they just didn't know that recently Russia didn't have any wars on Russian territory for like decades. They said, wow, your roads look so bad, that must have been a war. Russia at the time didn't have war for like 40 years. And they still couldn't fix the roads. because of corruption, stupidity, and absence of democracy in Russia. Another quote of Russian Ministry of Defense Shoigu. He said that only continuing war in Ukraine and making our army bigger, we can achieve social and economic development of Russia. So the war is the only way, and making army bigger, the only way of Russia development. What kind of century he came from? What kind of idiotism is that? How stupid is that? The worst thing can happen to Russia if Ukraine give up just now and say, please take us, the whole country. Russia would have to hold the army in a hostile country and rebuild everything they broke in that country, which will bankrupt Russia. So the worst thing possibly can happen to Russia if Russia will get the whole Ukraine. And this idiot, I can't call it any other way, saying the war and making army bigger is the way of make Russia better. Unbelievable. Meanwhile, another quote of Putin. Russia is a big and rich country, but its most important value is its people. This is not true, it never was. People are garbage in USSR, people are garbage in Russia. In this video you can watch yourself, you will see how much Russian country value its people. Everybody who is admiring Russian dictator, this is your future if you follow. Listen to me, Hungary and some other European countries and some American Republicans who is thinking that Russia is a good country with traditional values. Enjoy this video. And this is how in dictatorship people get treated. This is poor Russian mobics or mobilized people. Ukrainians are a nation of slaves pretending to liberate free people. Pathetic. That is true. So these people get beat up by sticks thrown in the hole in the ground which they dig in themselves because they were thrown in a battle without any training or anything. They were just brought to Ukraine, thrown in the battle, and they get scared. And that's why some other Russian people died. This is why these bastards decided we're gonna punish them. And you can see this is how people and Russian people are treated. This is how USSR treat them. And in one of my videos I showed in 1998 or sometime in my Volgograd region where I'm from, apparently in one of the military training centers in Prudboy, there was a hole in the ground where they were kept people back then. So this is full-scale invasion of Ukraine is nothing new. Russia did it in Afghanistan, Russia did it in Chechnya, Russia did it, USSR did it in Germany, and many other things. This is nothing new, but this is 21st century. Please remember that when you're watching. Another important thing I want to say that I was watching this war even in 2014 and so on. And those low-life bastards, they were stupid enough to film and post their own war crimes. And that's how I know it happened, because they were posting it themselves, filming themselves proudly of what they do, just exactly like this guy in this video. In my Russian version of video I also showed this playlist, corruption. So this naked party and those women and people who steal from Russian people and pretend that they are supporting war and so on. Putin doing the same thing himself. This is in English video. Putin incriminated himself in corruption. He's on camera admitting basically that he's basically corrupt. And with other proofs. So for Putin's yachts, which is about 9 of them I heard of, and luxury, and his naked parties, this is what Russian people are dying for in Ukraine. This is why they are fighting to build that little Tsar an empire. For he and his so-called elites could live luxurious life and pretend that this war is not about them, that they're not affected by it in any way. And I watched this war in Ukraine, even when it just started in 2014, even before Bucha, when they were murdering people in Slavyansk, and after liberation of that city they find the graves and mass graves right in downtown and so on. Meanwhile, many European leaders were shaking Putin's hand and business as usual. The appeasing of dictators never work. If we won't stop Putin there, in Ukraine, when Ukrainians are doing all the job, all they need is just more weapons and more help. If we won't stop Putin, this stuff, this black liquid garbage gonna flood into our countries. This is why I'm showing you this post, because Putin using Soviet ideology, Putin is using German Nazi Germany ideology. He is a fascist, and in my country, Russia, he created a fascist dictatorship regime. And if he will not be stopped, he will go further. There is no question about it. Please help Ukraine. Learn the truth and stay informed. I wish you all the best in the new year, and thank you for watching. See you later.